Right, good morning, everybody. We are in week 2 of our series called He Shall Be Called, and we're looking at those 4 names of Jesus in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 6, where it just speaks prophetically. If you remember last week, we started our series where Isaiah was writing between 700 and 800 years before Christ, and he spoke about the Savior King that was going to come. And he speaks about this child that was going to be born, this baby that was going to rescue. And he mentions these 4 names. But there are about 49,000 Christmas songs. That's a whole lot of Christmas songs. And some songs range from deep, theologically rich songs that we sing that you kind of, if you read the words, you just realize that who wrote that particular song had a relationship with Jesus. It's deep theology. For example, a song like Hark the Herald Angels Sing. So let's read the words. Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. Have you ever tried to read the words to a song and you end up singing it? It's just like, how do you read? So let's sing it, okay? Christ by highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time, behold him come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see, held the incarnate deity, pleased with us in flesh to dwell, Jesus our Emmanuel. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. I mean, that's deep theologically rich, right? Speaking about this God that took on flesh and came to be with us, to rescue us, to save us. Then you get other songs that kind of move your heart and just bring you to tears sometimes. They kind of like to stir something in you. And one of those songs is a song called Santa Baby. No. Now, so carols are crazy. You can go from incarnate deity rich to Santa Baby. I mean, like Santa Baby. And that song's been covered by Ariana Grande, Madonna, Taylor Swift, even Michael Bublé. And it's a song, if you know the song, or if you've read the lyrics, it's basically a really crazy, wild Christmas wish list. So it's somebody singing to Santa, and they've got this whole list of what they want. And if you know the song, some of the things that they ask for is a light blue convertible. Would you give me a light blue, like of any convertible, could I have a light blue convertible? Or also they're asking for a platinum mine. Like, okay, platinum mine, it's a bit random. They're asking for a yacht. Would you give me a yacht? I mean, a yacht would be really nice. And then while you add it, a ring and a husband for that ring. I mean, the sky's the limit, right? It's like, what do you want? Do you want a yacht? Yeah, give me a yacht. How about a platinum mine, maybe a ring and a light blue convertible. If you've got one lying around anywhere, I'd like to take it. It's like sort of the sky's the limit. And I was kind of thinking, if we had to have a wish list, if you had to have a list and you were asked, hey, if the sky was the limit on your wish list, what would you ask for? What are some things that you would ask for? And over the years of being in sort of pastoral ministry or in sort of being in the sort of church environment that I'm in, fully employed at the church, just over the years of just having conversations with people, you know, at a coffee shop or even at the office, sitting across the table with somebody, and they're really just going through some hardships, really just pouring their heart out, and they kind of sometimes in tears and really just heartbroken. And I've never heard somebody say to me, Jakes, I just want a light blue convertible, you know, or just, you know, a platinum mine. That would just really just bring me peace, you know, or a ring or something. I've never heard anybody. Generally, it's been a lot deeper. It's been things like, I'm trusting God to restore something in my marriage, right? Maybe something's gone a bit skew or a bit awry, and I'm trusting for God to do something in my marriage. Or perhaps it's somebody who's saying, I've got a broken relationship with one of my children, and I'm trusting for God to restore something of that. I'm asking God, I'm trusting for God to do a miracle, to restore that relationship that I have or used to have with a child of mine. Or or for healing. Maybe struggling with something, struggling with an illness or something that's gone on for a bit longer than you anticipated. Those are the things, right? Those are the things that really we trust in God for, that really bring meaning. Or sometimes it's, Lord, would you just bring some sort of light into this dark space that I'm in, some sort of hope. Right now I'm feeling hopeless, and I'm asking God, would you just restore something of hope? And Christmas, as we go into this Christmas season, like I said last week, Christmas, we know it's about Christ. It should be about Christ. And it's about God giving us what we really need. It's about God giving us who we really need. And sometimes we think we need a platinum mine, and God's saying, no, you need something far greater than that. Sometimes we feel like I need a yacht just to solve all my problems. You know, the best boat to have is your friend's boat. Eh? You don't have to clean it, look after it. But like, Lord, if I just had a boat, if I just had a yacht, it would solve. No, it goes far deeper than that. And there was a time in Israel's history, as we looked last week, but again this week, there was a time in Israel's history where they too were facing hardships, where they too were wrestling with God. And they found themselves looking elsewhere besides to God. They were looking at other people. They were looking to other things to try and give them the answers and to give them some sort of hope. And Isaiah chapter 8. So we're in Isaiah 9, but just before Isaiah 9, chapter 8, verse 19. It says from verse 19, chapter 8, verse 19, it says, someone may say to you, let's ask the mediums and those who consult the spirits of the dead. With their whisperings and mutterings, they will tell us what to do. So God's people started looking elsewhere, right? They started looking outside of God for vision, for direction, for wisdom, for purpose in life. But shouldn't people ask God for guidance? Should the living seek guidance from the dead? Look to God's instructions and teachings. People who contradict His word are completely in the dark. They will go from one place to another, weary and hungry. And because they are hungry, they will rage and curse their king and their God. They will look up to heaven and down at the earth, but wherever they look, there will be trouble and anguish and dark despair. They'll be thrown out into the darkness. And so they were looking everywhere besides to God. And as they were looking more and more elsewhere, it just got worse and worse, almost like stuck in sinking sand. And the more you're trying to get yourself out of it, the more it gets worse and worse. And as they were in this dark place, it was just getting darker and darker and darker, and more hopeless, more and more hopeless, more and more hopeless. But then Isaiah chapter 9, verse 1 and 2, God says, nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, He humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, He will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. And in this verse, it says, the people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. And so God was saying, there's no ways you're going to find this light inside of yourself or elsewhere outside of me. So God had to intervene. They could have looked in themselves and said, hey, look, what book have you read lately? What self-help book? What kind of let's put our brains together. Let's try and figure this thing out. And the more they did that, the worse and worse it got. And so God had to intervene. God said, I will bring a light. So that had to come from outside of them. God had to bring something from the outside to say, hey, come, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to bring light because you guys are stuck in the dark. And that's the truth of the gospel. We see the gospel right there. The gospel is that we couldn't save ourselves. We couldn't rescue ourselves. And for us, things were just getting worse and worse. And so God had to send His Son. He had to send the light from the outside, something or someone from outside of us to come and to rescue us and to bring light, to shine light, and to give us a hope and a future. Then verse 6, which is what we've been working through, goes on to say, for to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on His shoulders, and He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So God sends a baby. Think about that. This king that they've been hearing about, this king that Isaiah has been prophesying about, a king is going to come. The government will be on his shoulders. He's going to rule. He's going to reign with all authority over every kingdom, over every man, over every dominion, over every nation. And God sends a baby. Like, really? Is this really God's plan? Yes, it is. For to us, a child is born, a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor. That's what we looked at last week, that God's counsel to us is wonderful, that he's all-wise, all-knowing, and we can go to him with anything that we have and ask God, what should I do? Where should I go? What should I say? What do you want me to do in this situation? And today we're looking at the second name that gets given to Jesus, and that's Mighty God. And we're going to break it up into those two words, mighty. We're going to look at the word mighty first, and then we're going to look at the word God. So these names for this child, Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, they're quite bold names for a kid, for a baby, right? I mean, if you go to a friend's baby is born and you're celebrating with them and you get there and it's like, hey, tell me about your baby. No, it's, he was born at this time and he's like 3.7 kgs and he's 52 centimeters and his name is Mighty God. Like, that's quite a statement, right? That's quite a thing. Like, whoa, okay, Mighty God. Peggy Noonan, she writes for the New York Times, and she says the following. She says, for 30 years, the last 30 years, the self-esteem movement told the young that they are perfect in every way. This is yielding something new in history, an entire generation raised with no proper sense of inadequacy. Think about that. An entire generation raised with no proper sense of inadequacy. You get told, no, you are perfect. You are 100% just as you are. Life's going to be beautiful. If you just strive for your dreams, if you just reach for your dreams, you shoot for the stars, everything's just going to work out beautifully. We're raising a generation of people, perhaps even us, with no sense of real inadequacy. And we see inadequacy sometimes, or most times, as a weakness, right? You don't want to be told that you need help. You don't want to be told that you're weak. You don't want to be told that you're struggling. You want to have it all together, right? Especially with social media nowadays. What you see on social media and what's really going on in people's lives is often not, they don't match up often. And sometimes we get surprised, even with celebrities, we get surprised that so-and-so perhaps has taken their own lives, or they're stuck in some situation. You're like, how did that happen? I didn't see it happen. I mean, I was following them on Instagram, and now all of a sudden, but you don't really know what's going on in their lives. Raising an entire generation raised with no proper sense of inadequacy. And I think we try and avoid the sense of being inadequate at all costs. I've got it together. If I just muscle up, if I just try harder, if I just work harder, things are going to work out. But God says he sends a mighty God. The Hebrew phrase is Al-Gibor, and that means a mighty warrior or mighty in battle. This is the God that we serve. And we often picture Jesus as this meek and mild, but actually he's a mighty warrior. He's a mighty warrior. Let's look at some examples quickly. Who created the heavens and the earth just by speaking them into existence? Our mighty God. Who delivered his people from Egypt? You think of all the plagues, the parting of the Red Sea. You think of God's protection, the pillar of fire by night, the cloud by day, provision, food, water, protection. Who did that? This mighty God. Who gave Israel's army victory after victory after victory as long as they kept their eyes on him? This mighty God. Who rescued 3 young men from the fiery furnace? Who caused the sun and the moon to stand still? I mean, who can do that? This mighty God. Who brought down the fire on Elijah's offering? Who brought down the walls of Jericho by people just singing a few lovely songs marching around the city? Who did that? This mighty God. Who fed Elijah using birds? Who made Balaam's donkey speak? Who kept filling up the widow's jar with oil? This mighty God. that we serve. I want to ask a few questions of us this morning, and they're quite rhetorical, but when do you need fuel? When you've run out of fuel, right? When do you need rest? When you don't have any rest, right? When do you need peace? When you don't have any peace. When do you need sleep? When you've got a couple of young kids running around the house and you have to play ching chong chow with your wife of who's going to get the afternoon sleep and who's going to look after the kids, right? When do you need sleep? When you haven't had any sleep. When do you need a mighty God? When you don't have any might. It's no use God sending a mighty God when we've got all the might within ourselves. Then why is he even here? He sends a mighty God because you need power. You need might. We need might. We are weak and frail, and outside of this mighty God, we are useless. We are weak. You don't need a mighty God when you're trying to live the celebrity dream. I've got this all together. I don't need a mighty God when that's my goal in life. I don't need a mighty God when I've got my whole life together. No, everything's fine. Everything's perfect. I don't need a mighty God in my life then. I don't need a mighty God when things are going okay. I don't need a mighty God to want to have control over my life. I've got this, Lord. Don't worry. I don't need a mighty God if my life's goal is to play things safe. Do you know when you need a mighty God? You need a mighty God when you feel stuck. When you feel stuck. When you have no sense of direction in your life. When you're feeling lost, hopeless. God, what are you doing in my life right now? Help me understand. You need a mighty God when you think you're not enough. You need a mighty God when you need someone to defend you. When you feel trapped. When you feel weak or attacked or even useless. When you want to make a difference in this world. You need a mighty God. So we don't just lack light. We're not just walking around in darkness. We also need power. We need God's power at work in us. And it's not going to come from the outside. It's not going to come from all your friends, all your buddies. It's going to come from God. And that's why he sent this mighty God. So his might can be at work within our lives and through us. Jesus said the following in John 15. He says, I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. But then he says these words, which we forget. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Apart from me, you can do nothing. Nothing means no thing or no good thing. Nothing of everlasting value. Nothing, we can do nothing of eternal value outside of Jesus. So we can be busy, but not necessarily productive. We might be busy, but not necessarily doing what God has called us to do. Paul takes it even further. He says in Ephesians 2, he says, but as for you, you were dead. Not in sinking sand and kind of trying to get out or kind of in the ocean and really trying to get your life together and you're kind of slowly sinking, and then last minute Jesus throws his lifeline to you and you grab the lifeline and you manage to climb the rope and get onto the boat and you're like, yo, okay. You're like, I saved myself, but you also kind of saved me. No. The Bible says we are dead. They're dead. A dead person can't climb a rope. Dead person can't climb and grab a lifeboat or anything. The Bible says we are dead in your transgressions and sin, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of the world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us lived among them at one stage, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. I mean, that's the bad news. The good news is, but God sent his son to rescue us because we were dead. Who can do this? Who can save us? Who can rescue us? Only a mighty God. Only a mighty God can do this. He's mighty to rescue us. He's mighty to heal. We're trusting for healing. And he's mighty to save. And secondly, he's a mighty God. Now remember, he's speaking about Jesus. And why is it important that we believe that Jesus is God? And this is a whole subject that we could cover over weeks. But Jesus is not a God or just the Son of God. He is God. God in the flesh. That's Jesus Christ. Christ. And it's important that we believe that and we understand that. Otherwise, we just see Jesus as another holy man, another good man, another man who kind of lived on earth and he was really close. You know, him and God were like tight. They were really close mates. And God sent him on this mission and he was doing a couple of things and he was on this assignment and then he got back to heaven and God was like, hey, well done. You passed all those things. And he is God. He is God in the flesh. God coming down to be with us. He didn't lose his deity. He took on flesh. He took on humanity. So he was 100% God and 100% man while Jesus was on earth. Voddie Baucham says the following. He says, our view of Jesus matters. Our Christology matters. It matters because it affects everything that we believe and do as Christians. And in this culture in which we live, we have a view of Jesus that is more than slightly askew. We think of Jesus not as a very masculine character. For example, when you think about the pictures that we have of Jesus, the pictures that we have of Jesus are pictures of a European metrosexual with the hair of a shampoo model, hands that have never seen a hard day's work, and feet that have never walked a mile. That's kind of how we picture this Jesus. You know, he's just manicured, pedicured, eyebrows plucked, Pantene hairstyle, like Oliver Lay, and just beautiful feet, and just like floating, and like, actually, no. If that's your view of Jesus, it's going to be hard to relate to him. This holy man who just had everything together and just perfect in every way. He was perfect in every way, but he was also fully God, fully man. He faced hardships. And we worked through that passage last week in Hebrews where it says that he faced everything that we faced. And because of that, he can identify with us. When we face shame, he knows what it means to face shame. When we feel like we've been betrayed, Jesus knows what it means to feel. He understands what it means to feel like you've been betrayed. Pain, heartache, sorrow, joy, all those other things. But he can identify with what we're going through because he's fully God, but yet fully man. John 8, verse 56. I just want to labor on this point a little bit of Jesus being fully God and God. Not a God. There are some translations, like, for example, the Jehovah's Witness Bible. They take John chapter 1 and they change it from in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And they've taken it to say that in the beginning the Word was God, it was with God, and the Word was a God. But as Christians, we believe that Jesus is God. Not a God, he is God. God in the flesh. In John 8:56, it says, your father Abraham. So Jesus is speaking now to the Pharisees, and they're highly offended that Jesus is calling himself God. They're like, no, you can't do that. It's blasphemy. And they would be stoned. They'll be killed for that. And Jesus is talking to them, and he says, your father Abraham rejoiced. Now remember when Abraham lived, okay? Long before Jesus came to earth. But your father Abraham rejoiced at the thought of seeing my day. He saw it and was glad. And they say to him, you are not even 50 years old. They said to him, and you've seen Abraham? And Jesus says, very truly I tell you, Jesus answered, before Abraham was born, I am. Before Abraham was born, I am. And what offended them the most was Jesus was quoting Exodus 3, where he says, I am. Remember when God called Moses to go to Pharaoh and tell him, hey, you've got to let God's people go. And Moses goes to God and says, but who do I tell Pharaoh you are? What's your name? Like, who do I tell him you are? And God says to Moses, I am. I am. And so Jesus here is quoting the same verse. He's saying, I am. I and the Father are one. I am. And they wanted to stone him. John chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, capital W, speaking of Jesus. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Remember when Jesus was tempted in the desert, and he gets tempted, the devil says, I'll give you all these kingdoms if you just bow down and worship me, right? And Jesus' response is, you shall worship the Lord your God only, right? But then you look at other times, so he says that, you shall worship God only. And you see other times where people worship Jesus, and he doesn't say, no, don't worship me, you're supposed to worship God only. No, he receives their worship. Remember when Jesus calms the storm in the boat? And he calms the storm, and they are stunned, they are amazed, and the Bible says they go on to worship him. They worship him as God. Jesus doesn't say, no, don't worship me. No, you're not allowed to. You only worship God. He lets them. He allows them to worship him. When Jesus comes into Jerusalem, the triumphal entry, they're worshiping him. They're waving palm branches, and they're worshiping him, singing to him. He receives that worship. And we see time and time again, Jesus is fully God and fully man. So not only a wonderful counselor, but also a mighty God. When Isaiah tells us the names of Jesus, he's not just telling us who he is, he's also telling us what we need. So when he says Jesus is the wonderful counselor, he's telling us he's the wonderful counselor because we need counsel. We need help. I need wisdom. Lord, I need counsel. Where am I going to get it from? The wonderful counselor. I'm feeling weak, Lord. Where am I going to get strength from? I'm going to get strength from the mighty God. I'm feeling like an orphan. I'm feeling like alone, abandoned. Where am I going to get identity from, a sense of identity from? I'm going to get that from the everlasting Father. When you feel like my life is just full of chaos right now, it's just everything is just all over the place. I need some sort of calm. I need some sort of direction. Where am I going to get that from? I'm going to get that from the Prince of Peace. So I just thank God so much that he hasn't left us on our own. He hasn't left us to figure this out on our own. Okay, here's the book. Follow these things and make your way to heaven. Right? Just follow these things. Try your best, and we'll see who makes it and who doesn't make it. He doesn't do that to us. He sends his Son to be with us because we couldn't make our way to him. We couldn't climb the ladder to him. We couldn't climb the rope to him. We couldn't get to him. But he comes to us walking in darkness, us without might, without strength. He sends the light. He sends his Son to come and to break into our hearts and to break into our lives and to come and rescue us. And I'd like to just, as I close this morning, just to pray for us. So can I ask that everybody just close their eyes, bow their heads, close their eyes. And if you just imagine a fork in the road, you're walking down a road and you come to this fork in the road. And that's what the gospel is. There's accepting and receiving Jesus or rejecting him. There's no middle road. There's no okay, I'm gonna try, but I also want a bit of both. I want to try a bit of both. I want to live in a bit of both. The gospel is either we receive and accept Jesus or we reject him. Those are the only two options that we have. Tim Keller writes the following. He says, Jesus evokes extreme reactions. Some are so furious with him that they want to throw him off a cliff and kill him. Others are so terrified that they cry out, "Depart, get away from me." Others fall down before him and worship him. Why the extremes? It is because of the claims about who he is. If he is who he says he is, then you have to center your whole life on him. And if he is not who he said that he is, then he is someone to hate or run away from. But no other response makes any sense. Either he is God or he isn't. So he's absolutely crazy or infinitely wonderful. The modern world, however, is filled with people who say they believe in Jesus. They say they understand who he is, but it hasn't revolutionized their lives. There's been no crisis and lasting change. The only way to explain this is that, contrary to what they claim, they haven't really grasped the meaning that he is God with us. To Jesus, and he's saying, and the gospel's saying, we can never look at Jesus and say, nah, okay. It's either we choose to follow him or we choose to reject him. That's the truth. But God hasn't left us in the dark. He hasn't left us weak, fumbling around. He's chosen to rescue us. He's chosen to send this. For to us a son has been given, a child has been given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. And so we just thank the Lord that there is hope, that there's hope in him, that he has made a way. And so this morning, if you're here this morning and you don't have a relationship with Jesus,